We are actually already live. It didn't even do the countdown. So, hey everyone, welcome back to the Sober Witch Life podcast. I'm your host, Sunshine, the pink haired sober witch. And it's Sunday. I'm super glad all of these storms have passed. We had this crazy storm coming through. So, if you happen to be anywhere that storm is passing, be wary because it was pretty gnarly. That being said, it is another one of the week that we are absolutely blessed on having a guest on the podcast. My hope is, fingers crossed, every single week we have a guest. But if not, you'll just hear from me like you would have normally in the past. But today, you know, it's interesting. As I have been kind of talking to folks that want to come on, I have to make sure and be clear that really to honor what we talk about as far as recovery goes, like we don't define someone's recovery. We don't define what somebody's in recovery from. And so this particular guest, definitely double checked and asked with me because their background's a little bit different. And I think it's really phenomenal for us to highlight this. I'm not here to tell her story, though. She is. So, without further ado, I'm going to welcome to the show, Kristine. Welcome. Why don't you start off and give us a little bit of introduction? Who are you, Kristine?
Thank you so much. My name is Kristine Genovese. I am sometimes known as the spiritual gangster. I do come by that name honestly because my last name is Genovese, as Italian as you like to make it. And my great great uncle Vito was the Vito Genovese from New York City and one of the head of the five crime families. So I am actually bringing some light to that last name through all of the work that I do with the soul intelligence method. I created a bioenergetic healing method that helps get to the root cause of all dis-ease or dysfunction in the body or dissonance in your frequency, and helping people to shift that trauma, that old pattern, possibly addiction, up and out of the body. And I get to do that in the field of functional medicine. I'm also
Mm.
the Chief Growth Officer for Nutritional Frontiers, which is a nutraceutical company that provides great supplements and shakes and all kinds of good things to healthcare providers so we can help people heal naturally. So I'm healing people physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and energetically. But the only way that you can do that, I think, is you got to lead by example, and so that's one of
Mm.
the reasons why I'm on this show today with you, and we're going to talk through my recovery and what I believe I've been healing from.
I love that. I love that. I'm really excited. It's kind of this beautiful thing because when I have the show, it's like, yes, I get some notes and, you share a little bit, but I get to sit back and listen to the storytelling. So, Genevieve, your story is a little bit different than maybe some of the other folks that have been on. But I'd like to go back and start just like how we do with everybody. Can you tell us what that journey, because you said it was self-abandonment that you're
Hmm.
recovering. What is this journey, right? If we go all the way back to the day and the times that you were in this self-abandonment mode, like what did that look like for you?
Well, what's really interesting is, I realized it was a huge pattern and an underlying theme in my life. And, going all the way back to childhood, that's when we get most of our wounds, right? The key wounds, and that then bloom later in life. And then you go, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm still going through this. So I grew up with an alcoholic father, and I had to constantly walk on eggshells, right? Like just make sure he was okay. If he was okay, I was okay. If he wasn't okay, I wasn't okay, and he wasn't okay most of the time. And in that way, that's how I learned to self-abandon. His needs were more important than
Mm.
my own. And that's really where it originally started. In addition, I had to take care of my younger brother. And there were a lot of days where we would get home from school. He would be, completely, out of it, drunk, violent, um, abusive, and we would have to run to a neighbor's house until my mom got home from work. Um, it was really a tough growing up. I mean, my dad eventually um, did decide to get sober, but only when my mom said, "Okay, you either get sober or we're done." And so he went away to rehab. But before that happened, That didn't happen until I went to college. So I didn't really get to know him as a sober person. Um, and people later described it as like kind of being a dry drunk in a way. So he stopped the drinking, but he didn't really stop the patterns of behavior, unfortunately. Um, but I guess another thing that kind of sticks out in my mind, just kind of growing up with that, um, you know, that whole self-abandonment pattern showed up, throughout my growing up. I mean, at one point, he had two drunk driving offenses within 10 days of each other. Um, like that would put somebody away for a while now, but back then he got 30 days in jail. And he convinced the judge that he had to go home to work. So every morning before school, my high school years, my senior year of high school, I had to pick him up from jail, bring him back home. Every day after school, I had to take him back to jail. It was the most bizarre experience, right? So I couldn't wait to run away to college, to be honest with you. I was like, I was ready to get out of the house when all that occurred. I mean, and there was a lot of abuse. There was physical abuse, mental abuse, emotional abuse. Um, and so I didn't think, very much of myself, obviously, kind of growing up that way. And so that's where the pattern of self-abandonment began. Now, I do think it served me in some way. I wound up, I mean, it didn't serve me in my personal relationships, but in my work relationships, it kind of did. And the reason why is when you self-abandon and somebody's needs are greater than your own, what that caused me to do is to be an overachiever, right? I couldn't just meet expectations, I had to exceed expectations. So I was a badass corporate executive, let me tell you, turnaround specialist. I was able to fix broken companies, just not broken people at the time. And I do think it served me well there. But what it did in my personal life is I chose partners who underdid, so I overdid. And then I was mad that, I'm not even on the list. Like my needs aren't even being met. I'm invisible in this relationship. But I chose people that would reinforce that pattern for me. So pretty wicked, pretty wicked.
Yeah, I mean, I hear a lot of myself in that, God, because I say I'm a recovering alcoholic, workaholic, perfectionist, and control freak, right? And
Oh, I have workaholic tendencies. I totally get it.
yeah, and the same around, yeah, being an overachiever, and just, yeah, excelled in corporate, phenomenally. You're in this, you describe the self-abandonment, and I'm just curious, and where it kind of came from childhood. And you said a little bit, but I want to go a little bit further into this. Like, how did you see yourself through this? Right? Like, how did you, and maybe even what are the lenses in the differences that you saw yourself? Right? Because that's a real drastic difference between, struggling in personal relationships and yet shining in the corporate experience. So, like, throughout this, like, kind of self-abandonment journey, like, how did you really see yourself?
Gosh, that's a really great question. I think sometimes in relationships, for example, in a marriage, that you play certain roles. And so I think I was playing the dutiful wife role. And of course, their needs are more important than mine, and kind of justifying behavior, right? Whereas at work, I was able to, really focus on achieving the objectives. Because as a corporate turnaround specialist, my job was to figure out what people, process, or technology needed to shift so the business could achieve the outcome they were looking for. So whether that was more revenue or they wanted to be sold or whatever. And so there was always a goal to shoot for, right? So I was always focused on the goal and how do we get there and what's the best way to do it. And I was able to motivate people and find out what are the underlying patterns that need to shift so that everybody will win. And so I think I identified more with work than I did with my personal life, right? Because I got more satisfaction out of work than I did my personal life, of course, because I chose the wrong partners or the partners that were reinforcing that old wound for me, basically. And so when I say partners, I'm 0 for 3 in the marriage department. So it took me a very long time to learn this lesson. And it doesn't mean I need to be forever single, but it does mean that I needed to really heal this wound before I was ready to invite somebody into my life that would be more of an equal partner, right?
Mm.
Um, so and I'm in my 50s now, so I'm not a youngster, and it took me a very long time to heal this wound. And every time you think you've got it, you find a new layer. And so recently, I found a new layer. I have two sons. My older son has, decided he doesn't want a relationship with me.
Mm.
And so he doesn't believe in anything I stand for, in the spiritual method, the energetic method that I use, the holistic healing. He's very founded in allopathic traditional medicine. Um, and so it's kind of, at first it was like it was a rejection of me and everything I stood for. And then I realized, oh, he's going through his own journey. And so I really had to let go of that, because at first it was, the first response when you self-abandon is to chase, right? Oh, I gotta run that love down. I gotta go get that love. Um, and this one really was a test for me, like from the divine. Did you really heal it?
Mm.
And so what I do is I energetically, send him love, and just tell him from an energetic perspective, I've loved you from the moment you took your first breath, and I'll love you until I'm no longer here. Um, but he's obviously going through, his own healing journey. But it was like a final test to me that, um, was I going to self-abandon again? Was I going to go run after that? And I finally decided I know completely that I've healed the wound. And that's hard, right? That's hard.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it is very hard to recognize our wounds show up in another way, right? It's
Hmm.
very hard to see how else we're being called to, like, and I don't want to say prove to the universe. I don't think that's what it is, but it's really a proof to ourselves,
Right.
that the work that we've done has mattered. I'm curious, because you're definitely describing, stepping into recovery. Was there a point? Was there anything in your journey where you just knew, like, I'm done. Like, it's enough. In the addict world, we call this hitting a rock bottom. But I don't know that all, points of depletion, so to speak, look the same. Uh, like, is there any point that you can kind of look back and pinpoint and say, like, this was the day, or this was the time, or this was the year, right? That I knew everything had to change, or else I was going to continue to suffer.
You know, um, Leaving the last marriage, really, I realized, that had to be my Independence Day, truly. I left on July 4th.
Wow.
So I declared it my own Independence Day. Um, and I realized that my own happiness was more important than me continuing to try and support this person who wouldn't take care of themselves, was constantly wallowing in self pity. And I'm thinking to myself, how can I be this amazing healer and I can't even heal my own husband because he doesn't want to heal? He wants to stay stuck. And it was such an energetic drain on me. I didn't have enough energy for us. And I said, look, I know, like, towards the end of that marriage, he was going through prostate cancer treatment. It was very treatable, but cancer nonetheless. And just gave up on himself, gave up on life. I had to beg a girlfriend of mine to hire him so he would have a job. I, just give him a chance to get an interview at least, because he was overqualified for something. and she put him through the interview process, and thankfully he got hired. So he'd at least have a job. And this was during COVID. So March 12th of 2020, I officially lost my corporate job that I had. I was on my last corporate turnaround, and it was pretty shocking. And basically, that was probably that's the year before I really hit my rock bottom. And so that was really when I developed the method. It was, I got plucked out of corporate America. It was a pretty shocking event. It was the day I was literally in the oncologist's office with him, where he was getting a biopsy on his prostate and would find out he had prostate cancer. So to lose your job, I'm on the phone with the head of HR going, "What do you mean my services are no longer needed? I just got a performance bonus." Like, we're making the turn. We're in year one of a planned 3-year turnaround. Well, I'll tell you that side of the story. Basically what happened is the COO and myself had prepared the board deck. This was a Thursday, we're supposed to go in on Monday for the board meeting. And I had been begging to hire people in the fourth quarter. And I kept getting no from my boss because the CEO said, "No, we want you to hold the line on expenses this year." And I said, "Well, if we don't hire people, we won't have enough people to convert the leads in the first quarter." And that's what happened. So our board deck showed, had I been allowed to hire those people, if we converted at the same rate, we would have not only met the expectation, we would have exceeded the Q1 number. So what did he do? He fired me. Well, I texted my boss, "I just got fired." He goes, "Me too." I'm like, "What?" He fired us both. Walked into the boardroom Monday with our board deck and said we didn't hire enough people, and went on a hiring spree. Wow. I know, right? So that kind of, throws you for a loop. So dealing with me being the breadwinner, having the benefits, not knowing what my future was like, because of the way in which I was let go, I was given, parachute, which is nice. So I had about 9 months to figure out, what do I really want to do with my life? And truly, it was spent in a lot of prayer and meditation. And that's when the method came to me, right? When I kind of channeled it, and I knew what I was supposed to do with my life. I had someone say, "Okay, this is what you've always done, and you're in your zone of excellence, but maybe it's time to get into your zone of genius." And that's really what the soul intelligence method is for me. And that's where it came from. So I started to go through this transformation of, okay, you're known as this incredible, badass corporate turnaround specialist. And now you're going to step in and become the spiritual gangster. And how do you bridge those two worlds? And I also think that me changing my identity and stepping into who I truly was, right? You asked about kind of like how you see yourself differently. I don't think my husband liked that at all. I don't think he believed in it either, and didn't really believe in what I was doing. And so, he decided not to take care of himself. So doing all the things that he needed to do to try and, boost his immune system so his body could fight the cancer and things like that. He would do self-destructive things. And so he just kind of spiraled downward. So after about a year of that, I started to physically break down. My back went out on me, and typically when your back goes out on you, that you feel like your whole world's coming out from underneath you. I tried to play tennis, which is my outlet, my passion, because when I was a kid, what saved me from actually turning into an addict like my dad was sports. So I picked up tennis in my 30s, and it's just wonderful stress outlet for me. And I remember my hip went out. I couldn't walk. I'm like, I've never had to retire from a tennis match in my life. I played like 2 games, and I'm like, I can't walk. Like, I couldn't move forward. Okay. And then that wasn't enough. I all of a sudden, like, I had gone to the eye doctor to get new contacts. And this is all within like 2 weeks of each other. Okay. And
Wow.
so I go to the doctor to get new contacts. And a couple days later, I'm like, gosh, my eyes are really blurry, even though I have the contacts in. Something's not right. So I went back to the eye doctor, and they took eye pressure test. And it turns out I had like one eye pressure was like 36. They're supposed to be like 16 at the most.
Yeah.
And so I was having what they called a glaucomic cyclic crisis, which basically glaucoma is blinding. It blinds you.
Yep.
So the eye pressure was so high, the doctor's freaking out. She runs to get like drops. She runs to get me a prescription. She calls like some specialist that I have to get into over, over the weekend. And I'm like, okay, I'm blinding myself. I don't want to see my life like this. Literally. So my body was screaming at me that I had to get the hell out. And so on that lasted, I lasted like 2 more months. And then on July 4th, I said, I gotta go. This is my Independence Day. I need time to heal. You need time to heal. This isn't working out. Like he had to drive me to the eye doctor and he bitched that he had to take me because he had gotten drunk the night before. This my husband who's supposed to be recovering from cancer, throwing more alcohol down yeah, that really helps, right? Anyway, he was drunk the night before and went out and stayed over at, a friend's house instead of being home to take care of me. And I'm like, what? So yeah, so that was like the self-abandonment, holy shit, wake up call. I'm like, he can't even be bothered to drive me to the eye doctor that I need to go to because I can't see as I'm blinding myself. Yeah. And so it just, from that point, I was like, what I did is I just left on Independence Day. We played, believe it or not, a tennis tournament that I had committed to because I didn't want to let my team down, and went to lunch. And then I came home and I started packing my stuff. And he's like, what are you doing? I said, I told you I was leaving. I said, I'm done. He's like, well, we just had a great day. I go, one in how many? I go, I'm done. I need to heal and you need to heal. And I can't heal here. So I packed my stuff up, and thankfully my mom had a condo. She's a snowbird. I live in Florida. And so I ran away to her condo with her permission. And that gave me the space I needed. And after spending a few months by myself, I realized, okay, I got to stop this. But you asked, so that was probably the moment where I said, okay, enough is enough. But like I said to you, I feel like I was given another test just this past year with my son. So it was always like, did you really heal it? Let's see. Let me throw you this little whammy.
Well, I don't
Or is it
think
another
our
layer? Or is it another layer?
yeah. I mean, our recovery is not it's not like a light switch. You don't just flick it and then now poof, we're magically recovered. You kind of you peel back these things and these layers and the heal. And I always truly believe that we are given the opportunity to heal what we have the capacity to heal at that time,
Oh, that's a
right?
great way to put it.
And
I
so,
love that. I'm going to steal that.
yeah, it's just,
No,
if
that
and
makes total
I,
sense.
I'll give you a perfect example. I was 2 years, 2 or 3 years into what would that have been? That would have been 2023. So I was 3 years into my recovery. I had been no contact with my parents for about a year and a half. Um, and it was needed. Like I tried setting boundaries, but my boundaries kept being violated. So I just went no
Mm,
contact. And mostly because of my father, but my mother was so enmeshed with him
mm-hmm.
at that particular time, right? And so I was with a very loving partner at this point. He and I was watching this like deep, beautiful love he had for his children. He's got two kids. I don't have any. And I had a partner that I had been with, while I was still talking with my parents that passed away. And so I had a memorial at my house, and my father and mother show up. I haven't seen them in a year and a half. Decide that's when they're going to make the reunion. They show up at my house. And I was just like shocked and floored. And I could have handled it, except my father, again, does not respect boundaries. So my father kept trying to pretend like everything was okay.
Mm.
And it was so heartbreaking to me. And so, mind you, I'm 3 years into recovery at this point from alcohol use. And 5 days after this episode, I had a huge blowout with my dad. 5 days after, I finally have repressed memories of some pretty severe abuse show up that he did as a child. And I know to this day, and I know that if I wasn't in this beautiful relationship with this partner, that if I didn't see his devotion and love for his children, there's no way that the universe would have presented me that memory because I would not have been capable or had the capacity to be able to handle it, to be able to step into that part of my own healing.
I just got chills when you said that. That is definitely truth. Your truth.
You know, so there's something about, with your son, there's another piece there that you, if that would have come out back then, you wouldn't have been able to, it would have taken you down a different path that was not meant to be traveled.
Oh, absolutely. I believe that. That
You
makes
talk about
sense.
July 4th, Kristine. What did it feel like? Because I've left an abusive marriage, okay? I've
Hmm.
made very drastic changes in my life. And I'm always curious, like, if you could, like, step back right now, like, even closing your eyes and imagine, what did it feel like to walk out that door knowing it was the last time?
Oh, I felt so good. You
Mm,
know, honestly. I mean, just driving like, okay, I finally put myself first.
mm.
Finally. Um, right?
Yeah, oh, I
I
know,
think,
I know.
well, because like you said, I think we're really good at setting boundaries. We're not always good at holding boundaries,
Yeah.
right? It kind of reminds me of like an old Seinfeld episode. So you can take the reservation, but you just can't hold the reservation,
Yeah.
right? Kind of the
Mm-hmm.
same thing. And that's the most important part, holding
Yeah.
it. you know,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
and I think you know not being able to hold those boundaries is a form of self-abandonment, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you're again allowing the other person's needs to come before your own. You're
Yep.
moving, sliding scale.
Yep.
And it's more than, it's not to say that you can't compromise in some way or set a new boundary that feels good and healthy. It just means if you're constantly moving that line in the sand, you know, um, that's when you're really,
That is the
self-abandoning.
self-abandonment. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean that is the self-abandonment.
And I
Um,
saw, like, so I will tell you, I mean, this year was a very challenging year for me when it comes to self-abandonment. This past year in particular, that's when the issue with my son jumped out at me. I had a very, a person who I thought was a close friend completely, betray our friendship, no, not do what she was supposed to do at work, put things in jeopardy, and I was just like, what? And I had again, thought differently of her. I had a coach that I was working with completely not support me, not do what she said she was going to do, not like, wow. And I was just like, I fired the coach and I ended the relationship instead of tolerating and enduring an unhealthy relationship like I have so many other times. And so, again, that's why I say to you, choosing yourself is probably, um, the most liberating thing that you can do.
I think it's hard for people to understand and to accept it because well, two reasons that come to mind. One, as social creatures, as humans, we do need other people, right? That's just
Hmm.
one, right? But
Sure.
the second one is we live in a world where I don't know if there's a word for this, but I'll say it, where intimate abuse is so accepted.
Mm.
right? I don't know if anybody's ever used that word, but it's not physical, it's not mental, and it's not even emotional, so to speak. I mean, it can touch on all of them, but it's because you know them so well, because you are intimate with them. Somebody's abusing the intimacy, right? That
Mm,
it's a weird way to say it, but we live in a world that it's like acceptable, like, oh, well, they're my bestie. It's okay if I do that. It's like, so you wouldn't do that with a stranger, but because of your best friend, it's okay.
mm,
Like, to me, that's intimate abuse. That's abusing the intimacy of the relationship, right? Accepting that, yes, everybody should offer forgiveness and stuff, but you shouldn't do it just because of that. So, I, yeah, that's just wild. I'm actually going to write that one down after we're done
that's
and
really good. I
explore,
know. You dropping some really good nuggets.
explore it. Um, mm, you know, I'm curious because you talked about, and we'll get into like I love to hear about your journey about exploring this method, but a lot of this show is about spirituality. What was your spirituality like if you go back into your childhood or even like the college years or even while you're in this like active self-abandonment in corporate? What was your spirituality like then?
Mm. Well, I was raised Catholic, so I always say I'm a recovering Catholic, right? I'm getting over the
Same,
guilt,
yeah.
right? um, but I, I explored a lot of different faiths until I finally landed on just having a personal relationship with the divine.
Mm.
And I find lots of things to be sacred, from being out in nature and being on the beach and just communing with the divine. I mean, I every day I pray and meditate and journal. Sometimes I pull cards for additional guidance. Um, but I have a relationship with the divine today, like an intimate one, to use that word, to where I know when the divine's flowing through me, I can feel it. A lot of times it's when I'm writing in a creative space. I know when I'm doing my soul intelligence work, it comes, he, she, it, the divine, all that is comes through me, that energy. Um, and it's much more developed than it was. When I think back when I was in, kind of growing up, I was just really confused. In my 20s is really when I went on the search to figure it out, like what trying different faiths on and what did it feel like. And then I think in my 30s is when I really started to develop that relationship and I started to explore what I would say more spiritual practices. I learned a method called spiritual response therapy, which was developed by a Baptist minister, which used a book and a book of charts, which gave me the, sort of the foundation for how I would put my method together, years later. Um, and I realized I could feel energy. And I realized I was extremely empathic. And I realized, oh, that's why I always felt awful when I was around my dad. I was literally picking up on his self-loathing. I was picking up on all of his anger, all of it. And I would feel myself change when I was near my dad. But when I was in it as a kid, I didn't know it, right? I didn't know what it was. So it took kind of, exploring the spirituality and understanding, oh, the narcissist and the empath. It's a story as old as time. Here I am, right? And understanding that that's why I felt horrible. And then I'm like, Mom, I just don't like being around him. I don't like being in the same room. I don't like the way I feel. I feel different. And I finally figured that out and what that was. And then in my 40s, I really learned that I had this capacity to shift energy. That not only walking into a room can I change the energy in a room, but I can also lift entities off of people, out of places. And so I had that foundation. And so it was really funny because in my 40s, I was on a mother-daughter trip. We were in St. Augustine. It's like one of the most, haunted cities in Florida because of the historical aspects. And we used to love going to historic home tours and garden tours and stuff. My mom's my bestie. And We walked into this one building. It was a jail. And I didn't want to go in at first. Okay. And I was like, all right, well, if she wants to go in, let's go in. We both went in. And I was like, oh, I don't feel good in here. And my mom's like, I have I have a headache. I have to get out of here. And so I said, okay. So we literally sat outside. We sat on like a swinging chair, and I just said, okay, Mom. I said, I want you to just sit here with me, hold my hand, close your eyes, and you just pray, okay? And let me do my thing. And so I shifted, an entity off. And the way I feel when there's an energetic presence that doesn't belong, it kind of feels like somebody's sitting on the top of my head. And I relate it to like, blocking my crown chakra, blocking my connection to source in essence. Um, and so I just sat, and I, did what I do in terms of shifting the energy and the entity. And I was able to get it to get off of me and off of my mom. And then I said, how do you feel? She goes, good. I said, well, I guess we got to talk, because I never told my mom that I could do this, right? I was hiding. I had to come out of the spiritual closet. I hadn't really done that yet. And then she told me that when she was a little girl, she used to know when someone was going to pass because she would see somebody's aura turn gray. And it scared her. And because she was raised Catholic, she prayed and prayed that the gift would get shut down. And so that's what happened to her. And then she wound up going into, traditional medicine and running hospital laboratories and things like that, because she just ran completely to the other side. Now she truly embraces who I am and what I'm doing, and she understands it, and how it all works in the world. But it was just kind of interesting. That's kind of how, in my 40s, I knew I had an ability. And then until this really happened to me, where I was plucked out and given, like everyone else, a grand time out during COVID, it really gave me the time to slow down, to go within, and to listen to what I was being told, so that I could bring this method forth to help others.
Yeah, same. There's a lot of like similarity. Like I lots of similarities. Same thing. COVID was a blessing for me, in a lot of different ways, even though it was a curse for the world. Um, I've got to share this with you, because you might find it interesting. So I also, same thing. I've realized looking back that a lot of why my childhood would have been difficult living with an alcoholic father. But being an empath and a highly sensitive child living with an alcoholic father, and then a mother who he was abusing, and a brother that he was abusing, there was a lot of energetic in that space that, was incredibly dysregulating and overwhelming for me as a child.
I'm like,
What,
I thought you were describing my house.
yeah, I know, I know.
I literally was like, wow, you nailed it, didn't you?
Yeah, no, I like this is what it was. And so
Wow.
what I've realized doing my own, work, and being in my own recovery and doing like this deep work, is that when we are highly sensitive individuals and we have this empathic gift, right? What, some people would label us as becoming fixers, but we're not actually trying to fix the other person as much as we're trying to not feel them.
Hmm.
Right? So when you, and I say this too, like as you, venture into other relationships and things of that nature, you're always going to pick up the individual that you're around, right? And it's
Yeah.
not necessarily just choosing these partners, that aren't like on the same level or the journey, but it's a matter of, they themselves have probably learned how to mask their own energetic long enough that their mask finally comes down. And now, as an empath, you're wanting to go right back into the place where they were masked. You don't want to
Mm.
feel it anymore. So, like, we get into this, the self abandonment comes, not that we're trying to fix them. We, as an empath, no longer want to feel the shitty things that we're feeling from them. Right? And so like, we're like,
Yeah.
yeah, of course, I'm going to do whatever I can because I feel like shit every time I'm around them. Right? It's just, So
That is such a
it's
cool way to look at it. I've never looked at it that way. But yeah, I mean, but think about that was my whole job in corporate America is to fix what's broken.
I did a lot of it myself. I did a lot of it myself
Yeah.
in corporate. Um, yeah, so I just share that because I think even with your son, and him like recognizing that he's going through this, is a big deal. Like he's got his own journey that he's got to go through on this. But there's also this piece too with him where you him not wanting to have anything to do with you is actually a gift to you.
It
Because
is.
if he was still in your life, on an active and daily basis,
Hmm.
right? You would be feeling all of what he feels and still being not having, being put in this position to not abandon yourself over and over and over and over again.
Yeah. And the thing that makes that a little bit easier for me in us that I believe is because I have a great relationship with my younger son. I have a great relationship with my mom, with my brother, with everyone else in my family and friends, and including their father, my ex-husband. Um, and nobody understands it. Nobody knows why or what's going on. And he did. This is he's in his second marriage. And the woman he married has three children, grown children. Like, I think one, it's like 11 and, 16, 17,
Yeah.
older. And I think she wants him all to herself. And so he's kind of pulled back from everybody. It's
Oh,
not just me, but he's only been vocal to me about it,
yeah.
just letting me know. Yeah,
Intimate abuse.
yeah,
Intimate abuse, right? He knows you
yeah.
intimately, and therefore, yeah. Oh, my heart, I will just tell you this, like, and you probably know it, but sometimes I think it's helpful to hear it out loud. I didn't talk to my mom for 4 years.
Mm,
And then at some point, Spirit kept speaking to me, and I knew it was time for me to reconcile. And the beautiful thing is, in that 4 years, even though I know it broke her heart, she went to therapy for those 4 years and explored things that she never would have talked about if it wasn't for the fact that I did what I did.
mm.
Right?
Wow.
So,
You never
the
know where the
love,
gifts lie, right? You never know where the
nope,
gifts lie.
nope, you don't. Um, you know, let's talk a little bit about, you've talked about, creating this methodology, and I think there's a whole nother conversation of like, and a different show where we get deeply into I want to hear how this methodology impacted you though, not just how you
Sure.
channeled it, right? Not how it became something that you're working with other people. Like, how did it impact your life, right? How did you change because of this newfound kind of download, that is, I love, so beautifully gifted to you because you had this trust and connection with the divine.
Yeah. It's changed everything about my life, to be honest with you. It's allowed me to be me, truly be me. Um, I went on a trip recently to Egypt. It was one of the most magical things I have ever done, and so grateful that I went. And remembered who I was in Egypt. Um, and all of the gifts that I had at that time in that temple, in Dendara, Hathor's temple. I didn't just have a deja vu, I saw energetic imprints of myself from that lifetime, right? And so, like, everything has changed for me because of this method. It has deepened my relationship with the divine. It has opened incredible doors for me. I wrote a book that's a best-selling book. I've been on a billboard in Times Square with my book. I literally last week just got back from a movie premiere called The Pillars of Power, where we talk about it's basically a 20-year anniversary of the movie The Secret, where we've talked about transformation. And it's got four of the original cast members from The Secret, like Dr. Joe Vitale and Lisa Nichols and Michael Beckworth and Marie Diamond. So it's yesterday's transformational pioneers along with today's transformational specialist. And so there's 5 pillars that we talk about how to live your best life, from mental wellness to health to money to relationships, and spirituality, and how they're all related. And I'm in 3 out of the 5 pillars in this movie. I'm in a movie. How has this method changed my life? It's dramatically changed my life. In terms of my own healing, though, I use this method on myself every week, multiple times in a week, typically. As many sessions as I do for other people. And what I'm really called to do is to teach other people this method so that they can heal. I have a joint podcast called The Holistic Truth, where the CEO of Nutritional Frontiers, Jamie Dorley, represents how to heal in the physical and sometimes mental aspects, like and how you can use supplements and what are the protocols to do that to give the body what it needs to heal. And then I talk about the emotional and energetic aspects of it. So together we're talking to people, how do you heal holistically in all ways? And I really feel like it's opened doors for me, especially in the field of functional medicine and integrative medicine, because we're using, I think what people need to remember is everybody and everything is energy. Okay, everything. The only way I'm seeing you right now is an energetic transfer, a frequency that's being interpreted by the laptop or our phone or however anybody is seeing us right now. Everything is energy and frequency. You wouldn't be hearing me. You wouldn't hear music if it wasn't energy and frequency. And so I think, people take for granted that stuff just pops on their phone, that they can stream anybody anywhere, like us right now. How do you think that happens? So we are part of energy and frequency and have our own unique energy and frequency. And when energy pools in the body, that's when it causes the dis-ease or the dissonance in the frequency or the dysfunction in the body, and you go see a doctor. And the coolest thing to me is Einstein said the future of medicine is frequency. Einstein. We're using electromagnetic pulse right now to destroy the outer membrane of cancer cells. We don't have to poison ourselves with chemotherapy and kill all the good cells and the bad cells together. We don't have to radiate the crap out of our bodies and burn it out and burn the good stuff and the bad stuff. We could actually use energy and frequency to get rid of it. It's just, so this method has radically changed my life. It has helped me heal. It has helped me grow. It allows me to understand why my son is in the position he's in and why this is happening at this time. It has allowed me to be all of me and to move into a completely different field of functional and integrative medicine. I just trained, I did a course where I teach people, I have about 30 charts in my method, and I teach people I give them, we call it SQ for you, so soul intelligence for you, where they learn how to just clear themselves, clear a pet, and a space, typically. And I do that in a 6-hour course, and I just taught this workshop yesterday. I had an MD in there, a doctor, and she's also not only an MD, but a naturopathic doctor as well. So she's gone from traditional to functional, and so she uses whatever means necessary to heal someone. Amen. And now she wants to incorporate my method, energy medicine, into her practice. I had a psychologist. I had a pharmacist. I had a nurse. I am so excited because people are starting to embrace this method, and I want to see it in wellness centers across the country. I'd love to see it in addiction facilities across the country, because what it does is you have to understand that everything that happens to us, right? We're energy and frequency. Energy, once it's created, can't be destroyed. It's got to go somewhere. And it's either going to go in your mental body, your emotional body, your physical body, okay? Or it's going to go into another person, place, or thing. And sometimes you're carrying energy around. We just talked about this, right? We're empaths, and it's not even yours. So sometimes, right, you're just in close proximity to someone, and it's like a flea. You pick it up, or, that energy vampire, that person that literally sucks the life right out of you, right? So I'm able to shift those things up and out of the mental body, the emotional body, or the physical body in a very painless way. And instead of like therapy where you have to go back and relive the trauma to get the emotion to move, up and out of the body. That's what we're trying to do. This allows me to pinpoint what it is, bring it from your subconscious to your conscious mind so you can release it.
Hmm.
And this method is dramatically, like I said, it's just changed so many things in my life. I'm, very, very grateful. And it was really interesting because the whole thing with my son was, okay, are you going to run away from soul intelligence because he doesn't believe in it?
Hmm.
Are you going to abandon your mission because he doesn't believe in you? And that was like the biggest punch in the gut. It really was, because it took me a second. I was like, I can't turn away from everything I know that I'm meant to do in this world because someone who's close to me doesn't believe in me. That's what I did with the husband.
Yeah.
And here's the pattern again showing up for me to make sure, have you really healed it? Are you really
Yep.
going to stay true to who you are? Or are you going to abandon who you are again? And so that's probably the greatest gift this has given me. As much as, it's painful that he's not, active in my life at this time. But I'm also looking at it, I know in my heart of hearts, at some point he's going to, regret that this was the decision he made and that he will eventually turn around and come back into my life.
Well, I
Because I'm a
will.
pretty good person.
Yeah, I'll say set some, you know, prayers and intentions. I always say, may he find the highest vibrational path for him. May he find his highest vibrational path. Yeah,
That would be fantastic.
yeah. I would love, if we can kind of wrap this up. Like your story is around self-abandonment, and you shared a lot about that. If you had somebody listening right now that is recognizing that they themselves have this pattern of self-abandonment, we often talk about, you could label it as people pleasing, you could label it as always putting others first, however that might be. But if you had somebody listening right now that's just like recognizing this, like, oh God, right, what would you want them to know right now?
That self-care isn't selfish, it's sacred.
Mm.
And you have to put yourself first. One of the greatest commandments, one of the few things I do recall from my growing up, was we're taught to love one another as you love yourself. And so when you look at it through that lens, you have to love you. You have to be the most important person. And that's the most important relationship to have, first of all, is with yourself. And you have to decide for yourself when you can no longer endure or tolerate, and when it's time for you to have your own Independence Day.
Yeah.
Whether that's changing your environment, whether that's changing a way of being, whether that's really holding a boundary, even if it's something as dramatic as cutting somebody out of your life. But you have to decide what's right for you. And for whatever reason, my son has decided that that's what's right for him.
I appreciate that. There's very little things that I believe are ultimate truths in life that, we will all die and change is the only constant. Right.
Indeed.
Um,
Indeed.
I know. Why don't you let folks know? I'll go ahead and drop the website here. Why don't you let folks know real quick if they are interested in learning more about, your method, more about you, more about how you might be able to help. Um, where can they find you? Where can they find you?
Where can I find me? Well, the quickest way to find me is to go to soulintelligencemethod.com. All of my programs are listed there. If you're interested in getting my book, you can get it there. You can also get my book on Amazon. It's also on Audible. And yes, I did read it myself. I went out to a studio in LA, recorded it, and I've had several people remark that they feel like they've gotten a healing since it's me reading it to them, which is kind of cool. I also have the movie coming out. It's called The Pillars of Power. Hopefully it'll be on streaming services, most of the popular streaming services really soon. We're having premieres in multiple cities and countries. And so once we do that, it should be out for people to view. I write, I'm a monthly contributor to Best Holistic Life magazine, and I was their January cover this year. So that's another place you can find me. And, if you're interested in, this method, it helps to shift trauma up and out of the body, old patterns, self-limiting beliefs, unresolved, toxic masculine or feminine qualities, all kinds of stuff. I can help somebody on a physical, mental, and emotional level, energetically, spiritually. And I've got, ways that you can work with me or learn the method yourself. So that's really what I feel called to do. And I would love to have more, neuroenergetic practitioners out there who can, make a difference in the world.
I love that. Well, Kristine, thank you so much for being here today. And folks, that if you're listening, go check it out. I've got the website there. It'll be in all of the show notes and the descriptions and all of that. But go check her out, learn a little bit more about the method. See, maybe you are interested. And I'll tell you always, if you are feeling the pull, if you are feeling the draw, that is Spirit's way of saying, take the step, take the leap, do it. So, all right, dear friends. Also, if you'd like to, get more in touch with anything on the Sober Witch Life movement, you can always go visit www.soberwitch.life and find out more, all that kind of good stuff. So, thank you again, Kristine. I appreciate you being here so much. And I'll say this from both of us to everybody. Both of us to all of you. Much love, and we'll talk again soon.